Welcome. I'm Shane Smith, Director of Programming for Hot Docs. Thank you very much for joining us for this special live conversation for the film 1,000 Cuts, part of the Big Ideas program, sponsored by Scotia Wealth Management. I'd like to thank our co-presenters, Democracy Exchange, and Journalists for Human Rights for their support. We'd like to acknowledge the diversity of the First Peoples of the territory on which the festival takes place and honor the stewardship of the Mississaugas of the New Credit, the Anishinaabe, the Iroquois, Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat. We're grateful to have the opportunity to live on this territory. The format for this event is a hosted conversation with audience questions. You can ask questions by entering them into the Q&A box at the bottom of your screen. This webinar is being closed captioned by AI Media. If you need closed captioning, you can turn it on in your Zoom app. And now I'd like to introduce the host for this event, Anna Serrano, who is the co-director of Democracy Exchange and the incoming president and vice chancellor of OCAD University here in Toronto, who will introduce our fantastic guests. Take it away, Anna.
Thank you very much, Shane. It truly is my honor to be here with all of you tonight, and I hope everyone is safe and well and has taken a breath from what a week we've had. And I can't imagine a more important conversation with two remarkable women than this one tonight. So I really feel honored to be with you, sharing these women and their insights with all of us here. So first up, I'd like to just read this remarkable filmmaker's bio from Motherland PBS site. I thought it best to kind of capture everything that Ramona has done by being as sort of specific as possible. As many of you probably know, she's an award-winning Asian American filmmaker, and she's best known for compelling character-driven documentaries that combine a profound appreciation for cinematic aesthetics and potent storytelling. And you can see that really come out through 1,000 Cuts as well. Her films have screened and won awards at Sundance Film Festival, Berlinale International Film Festival, Tribeca Film Festival, and many other top-tier festivals. And has received funding from ITVS, Center for Asian American Media, Sundance, MacArthur Foundation. She was awarded a prestigious Guggenheim Fellowship in 2016 and inducted into the Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Sciences. And her films, which you should most definitely check out, include feature-length films like Imelda, The Learning, Don't Stop Believing, Every Man's Journey, and Motherland. And most of them have been broadcast either via POV or PBS and many other broadcasts. So Ramona, are you here? Can you just say hello briefly to the audience?
Hi, I'm here. Thank you it's always weird for my bio for me to hear my bio because it's like something my mother would read out, but all the other things are edited out of your life and only the good things are said.
Well, we're really happy for you to be here with us. And I'm sorry you can't be in Toronto. I've heard so much about you.
I'm sorry.
I've heard so much about you. I was really looking forward to meeting you in person. And now I'd also like to introduce Maria Ressa, who I had the pleasure of hosting a meeting last year when she gave the keynote speech at Democracy Exchange Summit. And essentially rendered, an audience, 500 people speechless with this incredible speech she gave on disinformation and what was happening in the Philippines. And she is, really needs no introduction. She's a Filipino journalist and author, best known for co-founding Rappler as its chief executive officer. She previously spent 2 decades working as a lead investigative reporter in Southeast Asia for CNN. She's been an influential person of the year on Time twice, in 2018 as one of the collection of journalists from around the world combating fake news, and last year for being Time's 100 most influential people of the year. And most recently, also last year, she was awarded the Canadian Journalism Foundation's Tribute Honor, and many, many awards. But more importantly, I think everyone fell in love with Maria when they met her in Toronto last year. And what's remarkable is when you see this film by Ramona Diaz, you fall in love with her all over again. So without further ado, Maria, are you now on the screen here? Can you please say hello?
Hello. Thank you. Thank you for having this and for showing the film.
Yes. So there's quite a few of us here. There's about almost 100 in this room, in this cyber room. As Shane said, I will be monitoring the Q&A box here. I have access to it. So what I'll try to do is start up the conversation with Maria and Ramona. And then as you think of new questions, just put them along the box, and I'm going to try to see if I can pull them out as we have this organic conversation. Okay, sounds good to those folks. All right. It's very weird not to have interaction. Okay, so I think first up, Maria, the thing that, and Ramona, the thing that everyone probably is thinking about after having seen the film is, you know, that was June 2018. We understood what happened with the midterm elections, where Rappler was at in terms of the various lawsuits that you were under. Fast forward to today, we're in the middle of this pandemic. You know, tell us, so what's happening now? So what has happened since that film, since the film sort of ended? Take us through, you know, from June to now, what's been going on in the life of Rappler, in the life of Maria, and as Sally says, you know, how COVID-19 has impacted your work since then. Oh, did you hear that?
Ramona,
Maria.
The life of Rappler, that would be you.
Yes, that would be you.
Sorry, I was like, oh, you first. Oh my Lord, life of Rappler. So I think, why don't I start with the positive, because it's such a negative world. I think the positive is that we're not the only ones under attack. I'm sorry. The biggest headline from the Philippines is, you know, that the Philippine government tried to shut Rappler down. We got our order in January 2018. On May 5th this year, in the middle of a lockdown, we are starting our 12th week of lockdown. But on May 5th, the government issued an order to shut down ABS-CBN. Like us, it was with a minor regulatory agency. ABS-CBN is the largest broadcaster in the Philippines. The conglomerate employs 11,000 employees. It's got a market cap. When I was there, it was $450 million. But just to show you the way the Duterte administration has affected media, that market cap is now down to about 300 million US, right? But still, this is shut down. And the last time this happened was the beginning of martial law in the Philippines. Mm-hmm. What's happened in the Philippines with us is that this is our 4th year that we've been under attack. I think Nietzsche's phrase, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. That's actually what has made us far more resilient. And when the pandemic lockdown came in, we were actually prepared for it. We had reserves and cash flow. We had processes for working online, because we're an online only digital outfit, and we continue to do our job. And in the Philippines, coronavirus means it is one of the toughest lockdowns in the world. Apple mobility, Android mobility, if you look at the data, you can see how tough it is on the citizens. Our president on April 1 told the police that if people violated quarantine, that they should, and this is his quote, shoot them dead. Oh, I told you the positive. I had 8 cases that were in trial in 2019. There's weeks where I was in 4 different courtrooms the same week, and I was spending 90% of my time dealing with legal issues. But still, here's the positive. My first verdict, and what my lawyer, who was a former Supreme Court spokesman, said is probably the fastest trial in the Philippines. The verdict on the cyber libel case was due on April 3rd. The lockdown happened. All courts are closed, and it's been delayed twice already. And then finally, when the lockdown was extended, it's now delayed indefinitely. Justice, I don't know what to think about the world now. All I know is that you keep fighting. you fight for your rights. And I think in light of what's happened in other parts of the world, what's happening in the Philippines, our dystopia is happening everywhere else. So join us, except Canada. Canada.
Well, actually, today there was just, there were 4,000 people protesting down the streets in Toronto to be in solidarity with Black Lives Matter movement, as well as in solidarity with, Indigenous rights in this country as well. But, Ramona, yesterday when we were talking, it's one of the remarkable things about this film is, did you expect it to be more and more and more relevant with each passing day? It's kind of remarkable how this film has become almost the mirror to a future that's unfolding right in front of our eyes. What do you think about how the sort of extreme relevance of this film right now, and what are you hearing from folks who see it? Being American, by the way, also that's yeah.
You make films because you're drawn to stories, right? Or you're drawn to stories you can't turn away from. And so as a filmmaker, you have to tell those stories. You never really think that, next year it will be even more relevant, or it's not that kind of planning, right? And we premiered this film at Sundance, and this was pre-COVID, right? And post-COVID, my worry was, oh my God, who's going to care about this film, right? Because now it's COVID, right? It's public health. What is going to happen to this film? But of course, lo and behold, it's more and more relevant because it is real. The film is about press freedom, right? And the survival of independent media. And that's more and more relevant, especially here in the US. I mean, when I was watching those CNN reporters being arrested yesterday, I was like, I couldn't move. I was motionless. I'm like, it's like my film, right? It's like a continuation of my film that I shot last year in the Philippines, but I'm in the States now. So it's just become more relevant. It's just weird, but you can't ever plan that, right? It's just really, it's strange. It's sad that it's actually really sad that it's more relevant now.
Yeah. Well, what's interesting is you obviously had the nose, because Maria and Rappler represented that canary in the gold mine, maybe not in terms of thinking that a COVID might happen, or the kind of sort of injustices that would happen under this public health pandemic, but more around the nature of how our democracy is getting eroded with each introduction of unfettered technology use, So you obviously chose her. How did this happen? How did you guys come together? It seems through the film that you've been friends forever, because I've never seen such immersion, in the many scenes there.
It's the kind of films I do. I really immerse in people's lives. I think that's the difference between me and I think what Maria does. And really, I always say that, I ask permission to film you, right? But if you really knew what I meant, you'd never say yes. Like, I'd never say yes to me, I always say, because what I mean is I stay in your life for a long period of time. And I think, I don't know, well, you can ask Maria why she said yes, but I think she was curious about how I work, because we work so differently. She's a journalist and I'm a documentary filmmaker, and there's a fine distinction. I was attracted to the story in 2016, actually to Duterte and the drug war, because I found, like, on my Facebook feed, there were these horrific photographs that were popping up. And, it became more and more horrific, and I couldn't turn away. And I was finishing my previous film, Motherland. We were prepping that for Sundance as well. And then all these, again, I couldn't turn away. So I said, I think I need to really figure out if there's a film there. Obviously, there was a film there. But when I got in end of 2017, there were a lot of people already making that film, right? Mm-hmm. They were covering the what they call the night crawlers, journalists who were covering the drug war at night. So there are a lot of people on the ground already. So I said, but there's still a story here. So I think like in 2017, April, I moved to Manila because I live in the States. I said, I'm just going to move to Manila, figure out what the story is. And that's when I met Maria. Aside from also, I met, Mukha Usan and Bato. I met a lot of people. And then I figured, Maria was like the loudest voice against Duterte. And I'm like, oh my God, I must meet her. And so that's when I met her in 2018. And then, then one thing led to another. Then the next year in 2019, she got arrested. We were there, and it was like catching lightning in the bottle, right? And that's your story. And so we just never left her side until June, I think.
Yeah. So when you first met, now Maria, take us through the timing. At that point, had you already started tracking the social media disinformation sites by the time Ramona came to you, or was that just at the beginning?
So we came under attack in 2016, and we started tracking it shortly after we came under attack, precisely because we needed to know how to respond, right? You don't know what's happening until you have data. And that data actually is what's allowed me to have the courage to stand up and call them out, right? You can't do this with impunity. And that is the biggest problem with technology right now. Anyway, let's not go there yet. But I mean, in terms of Ramona, I remember as the CNN reporter trying to get an interview with her when she first produced Imelda. She turned me down, and that's the thing I remember when she first came and asked if she could film us, right? So I guess, you know what, the thing that I've learned is that you can never say no to Ramona, and that's a trait I think all journalists should have, because if you say no to her once, she'll a few days later she'll come back with a different entry. You say no again, she'll come back again, and then you realize, what's the core of this person? Can I trust this person? And when all hell was breaking loose around me, Rappler didn't have time to actually document what was happening to us. And I looked at Ramona, her core was solid, she's trustworthy. I was like, okay, go, And then in the process, we became friends. It is an incredible, strange time, and it still makes me very sad and very angry. But I think the thing about it is, if you can capture it, understand it, then you can begin to build what the future is going to look like. And that's really what we've been about the last 4 years. But to answer your question, the Propaganda War series, which is a 3-part series that I wrote 2 out of 3, came out in 2016. One of the series is how Facebook algorithms impact democracy. I think it was the first time that any news group had looked at how Facebook had an impact on democracy, right? And I feel like Cassandra, I keep talking about it. I'm still talking about it, and I'm still horrified by it. And too little has been done too late.
Well, I mean, for example, yesterday, essentially, Zeynep Tufekci just tweeted this out, which I'll share with all of us here, and you can read it. And in fact, someone here, Laura Gregory, in the Q&A has actually have this question: what do you think of Zuckerberg's statement that Facebook is not an arbiter of truth? Isn't that like a bartender saying, I'm not a guardian of life, I don't need to stop serving someone who's totally drunk and wants to drive? And obviously she's also this also refers to Trump's recent sort of spat with Twitter and all the stuff that's happened. But Tufekci here suggests that really Trump was talking to Zuckerberg. So what's your feeling of where we're at now? I mean, you're the one, as you said, that's been warning people of the dangers if we don't figure out a way to hold certain practices responsible for the erosion of democracy.
I agree with Zeynep. I agree with a lot of things she says and writes. I think that Mark Zuckerberg's position, and this was starting with his speech to Georgetown, when he talked about how Facebook would not regulate political ads, political speech, right? Where this is where political disinformation actually happens. And this is where lies can kill. And I know this both as a journalist and as somebody who studies these exponential lies on Facebook. Lies spread faster than facts, because facts are really boring. The social media platforms are designed to spread this kind of incendiary material. I am shocked that someone like Mark Zuckerberg would hide behind this idea that they are not the arbiter of truth, and then it triggers every free speech activist around the world who doesn't know what social media truly does. But the reality for us is that regardless of what Mark Zuckerberg says, Facebook is already the arbiter of truth because they are in charge of what spreads. They're in charge of distribution. So here's little fact that doesn't get the wide reach, and then here is big lie that reaches a lot more people. Which one wins? The lie. That's what the arbiter of truth is doing right now. And if they don't change it, which they must, if they don't change it, they will truly destroy democracy.
And it's not actually just destroying democracy. It could actually lead to violence and deaths. I mean, there's that very, very scary part in the movie where, all these folks, these trolls are in the coffee bean, and it was really ugly to watch. I mean, you must have been terrified. Well, Maria seems to have resigned herself to living this terrifying life. Ramona, you were entering that and joining the fray. I mean, how was that sort of managed, and were you really, what were your thoughts around following such a potentially incendiary kind of story?
Yeah. Well, first of all, I thought of my crew, right? Because especially my local crew, because I would leave. I live in the States. My cinematographer is also from the US, and also my sound recordist, but everyone else was local, right? So we had to have a conversation. Is this okay with you? And I gave them an out. I said, you don't have to stay, right? Because I understand you're staying here and we're leaving. Mm-hmm. So, but all of them stayed. They said, this is the right story to tell right now. And all of them stayed. It was really, oh my God, it was so incredible. Mm-hmm. And we just, we just didn't have time, right? I mean, if you think of the fear, then maybe you won't do it. But then I think I'd always regret it. It was a story to tell. It was right there in front of you. How could you not? Yeah. And of course, and Maria dons like a bulletproof vest, and everyone else in the car has a bulletproof vest. And we're like, we don't have any bullet. So you think of it for 1 second, and you're like, well, whatever, let's go, right? I mean, what are you gonna do? And then we also thought, let's have security ourselves, but we can't work that way. We can't have security while filming her. It just doesn't work, right? So, you just jump in. You do it. Otherwise, you won't get the story.
Yeah. Well, you certainly got it, because you, as I was telling you yesterday, there were moments in the film where I could smell the barbecue smells or whatever smells there that I remember from the Philippines. And David Magdael actually wants to corollary to that safety question, which is your safety even worse? I mean, are you more scared now, given what's happened with ABS-CBN and Rappler and the like?
I not so much. I'm in the US. I mean, we're starting to get trolled, right, on our Facebook page and Twitter. We're still able to be on top of that and block people and just really manage that. I can't imagine if it ever becomes exponential. I mean, and this is like, they're trolling the film. They're not even trolling me personally. There's a difference, right? Mm-hmm. So they're talking about the film. Maria's been trolled for like 4 years, and really incredible, like personal, yucky stuff, right? I cannot imagine. Right. It really freaks me out even when I read it. Like when I go on the page and I read it, it's really a little scary. It is scary, but we're still managing it. For all this time, I think also Maria has protected us because she hasn't retweeted us, and we were under the radar for so long. We wouldn't post photographs. I told the crew we were all under NDA. That the film is coming out. Bring it. What are we gonna do? This is a story, and we have to. It's going to happen. It's going to happen.
Yeah. And for you, Maria, is Rappler feeling more sort of unsafe these days for you folks, or is it the same as it always been?
I think we had a little bit of cover. I mean, in the sense that the target became ABS-CBN. I'm still a target. A few weeks ago, the government had another information operation where they took the journalists of ABS-CBN, the stars of ABS-CBN, who have started to fight back to reopen the network. And they took me, and you had Facebook accounts of police and military trying to brand us as, you know, Trump will say enemies of the state. Well, in the Philippines, they red tag you. They try to show that you are either connected to or sympathizers of the communist movement, which is illegal here, right? Meaning you become a terrorist. You could get treated like a terrorist. And this kind of systematic death by 1,000 cuts, systematic redefinition of journalist to terrorist is happening. And so we have to always call it out. I think you talked about, you know, this instance when one of it was in February of 2019 when someone came up to our office, and this is in the film, and live streamed, and then you had all this inciting to hate. They called people to come to Rappler to behead us, to shoot us. And it stayed on Facebook for 24 hours, right? Even though we were frantically saying, guys, take this down. It was like a pylon. What did that do to us? All of a sudden, I realized we couldn't trust the police to actually protect us. So we had to bring in security. We couldn't trust what happens when the fox is in charge of the hen house, when they're the ones literally attacking you. And then where is the line between online violence and real world violence? And increasingly, as we have seen in the United States and different parts of the world, that line is very thin. And this kind of information operations, the kind of pounding of hate has an impact on people. So sorry to go on and on about it, but I think that's the fundamental problem at the kinds of what are we seeing around the world? We are seeing lies spreading faster than facts. And in a time of COVID, lies can kill. In this time period, what do you do when you cannot ensure the integrity of an election? Here we go. The United States is walking into another elections. And guess what? They've already proven that Russian disinformation systems were at work in 2016, and nothing significant has really been done for 2020. So I'm Cassandra, right? So I think there's a lot. Can I just say Canada is a hope for me, right? I think the last time I was there, the last time I was there, I walked out in the middle of the Raptors celebration. So that was really cool. But you know, you guys had to deal with sidewalk labs. And I saw civic engagement at work. I love the work that you do, Anna. It's really people at work with facts in a reasoned manner debating. This is what democracy is supposed to be. But social media and the design of social media has literally prevented this from happening in so many emerging democracies and mature democracies like the United States and many democracies around the world.
So how do you maintain this sense of hope, given that, you know, and in fact, Kareem's in the room here with us in the spider room, and in the cyber room, not spider, cyber room. You know, he says,
hi Kareem, hi Rachel.
You've been so positive and so hopeful for so long through so many tribulations. How do you keep your team staff as hopeful and resilient as you are? And there's that beautiful that scene again, Ramona, that you captured. You know, I have to say, Maria, if I had been in that room with your staff, I probably would have been exactly like Pia. You know, where everyone's kind of like despondent after you understood where the elections were going. And what was it your staff member said that I'm seeing the last of democracy, you know, in the last few hours.
The last days of democracy.
The last days of democracy. And yet you were there, you were calm, you were strong, you were positive. It was a remarkable scene. What is your secret sauce? And Ramona, how did you get that? I mean, that was like, again, another lightning in a bottle kind of moment where you got that scene so beautifully. So Maria first, then Ramona.
I get hope by building on the rubble of the present and imagining and building the future. And the problem, I think, has been the one big shift. The world has always had its problems, and what's exacerbated the problems was technology and the kind of how journalists we gave up our gatekeeping powers, not voluntarily, but we gave up our gatekeeping powers and our distribution power of news to technology. Technology abdicated responsibility for protecting the public sphere. The design of social media, which, I mean, you can call them behavioral modification systems, right? The design builds polarity, filter bubbles into our real world, right? So the solution for me is technology. It is the solution to the survival of journalism, and it is the solution to the defense of the integrity of facts. And one of the things through all of this in the last 4 years, we've been trying to design and to build a new tech platform that is both distribution and builds communities of action, which is what Rappler has always been about. And ironically, our UX UI designer is Canadian, DVXD. I think he's here, right? But this is our beta. We rolled it out on World Press Freedom Day on May 3rd. It looks really nice on mobile because that's what it's designed for. Derek Vaz, his team, Canadians, say it again, helped us, figure out how do we take the best technology, how do we take what we believe in, and the values that are designed into this is the Sustainable Development Goals. And so this is my hope, right? When Ramona was trailing us, when I was getting arrested, I was actually thinking about some of the problems we were encountering. Here's what I know: tech in the hands of journalists is very, very different from tech in the hands of engineers and companies who are trying to manipulate people to keep them engaged. Journalists will protect the public sphere.
No, and you know what? It's your influence has been instrumental in Canada. So Aaron Miller of the Discourse has just recently launched something called IndieGraph, which is helping local news journalists get, they share, it's a collaborative platform that allows them to share technology and resources so that they could continue doing the important local journalism work. So certainly you are one of her heroes. And I think that meeting in Toronto was a marker of her path towards this. So, but yes, I mean, that's a good point. Technology itself can be made to heal to the needs of the people, but we need the right intentions and the right people at the helm trying to build that.
I think your question, Anna, has got to be for technology. What are their values? Because the guiding light for the building of these massive platforms has been keep people engaged. So it's very addictive. It plays to the worst and the weaknesses of human nature. It's very insidious, right? If television could influence you in subliminal ways, well, social media platforms and algorithms are far more insidious than television ever was. And I think this is one of the things that we need to deal with. Another Canadian that I interviewed, Chris Wiley, right, the Cambridge Analytica whistleblower, he called the Philippines the petri dish for of the countries like ours where they tested these tactics of mass manipulation. And then if it succeeded in our country, they ported it over to the West, to the United States and to Europe. It's really shocking to me that this has been allowed to go on for as long as it has. And our systems of election, even marketplaces, even the market can't be insulated from social media now because it is the primary place where we now get information.
And really what we need are storytellers kind of embedded in not just understanding what's happening in the manner that Ramona has kind of talked about your story, but also perhaps in trying to figure out how to infuse those values into the types of technologies that we want to create. So for you, Ramona, I mean, I think what makes this film so remarkable is there's so much nuance to, because you're so character driven, and it's obvious that you have a generosity of spirit in the way you capture the stories. I mean, as I told you yesterday, you know, there was a generosity to the way you shot Mocha Unsan, you know, which might seem at first, you know, unexpected, but then as you start to let the film seep into you, you realize, oh, because this is what this film is about. There's so much pathos in it. You know, how do you think your role as a storyteller is going to evolve in terms of this next stage of technology that we need to start to kind of really wrangle? And do you see yourself as playing a role in that somehow?
Oh, that's a good question. You know, I'm you know, when you mention Mocha Uson, to me, when I meet people, I know there's always a story behind the headline, right? And that's what interests me. I always feel like if it surprises me, it's going to surprise an audience. If I'm interested in something, it might surprise an audience, right? I think in stories, I'm really more interested in the grays and not the black and white, because that's where complexity lives, right? It's a messy, messy world. Nothing is ever really as it seems. Mocha, you know, I mean, she has her own reasons for being such a follower of Duterte. Some may think it's misguided, right? But she really truly believes, and I think that's where you have to start, right? You have to start from there. When I have to kind of be really interested in like the people I film. Otherwise, what's the point, right?
Mm-hmm.
I don't. I'm not there to be like to get the gotcha moment. That's not what I'm about. So in terms of technology, I think, you know, it's just continuing to show the complexity of situations, that the things are messy, and that you have to really critically think of things, right? And really see through headlines, right? And that's what I'm hoping. And really my job as a filmmaker is to give you an experience, right? That's really what it is, to give you an experience. At the end, you develop whatever, empathy, or you also relate to the story, especially this story, which is really so incredible, because when we were screening at Sundance, you know, a lot of people came up to me and related. I mean, they really, truly related to the story which was happening in the Philippines. They saw their you know, parallels to what's happening here in the US, and it never mentions it in the film, right? It never makes that connection. But audiences are really smart. See, I never ever underestimate my audience. They're smart. They will make that connection. They will connect the dots. I'm not sure I answered your question, but yeah.
No, I think you answered the question, which is, you know, the problem with technology is, if you think about it, it's like ones and zeros. So it's all about like going straight to the black and white, right? So and that's why storytellers, if you marry them with tech, all of a sudden it no longer can just be that sort of reductive, simplistic view of the world, winners and losers, and, you know, that kind of thing. So,
but it has to be also long pieces, right? Because it develops. I mean, my films develop character over time.
Yeah.
Right, and that's really key. You have to stick to it over time, and basically, it gives you a story. And it's not a primer on the Philippines. It's not a primer in the drug war. There are very many things that you won't find out about the drug war in this film, but it doesn't matter, right? Because at the end, you know enough, and if you're, you know, Google it, I say. But it's not about giving you, you know, the stats of the drug war. It's just giving you an experience of what journalists, like there's a story in the film told through Patricia Evangelista's eyes, really rooted in the experience of a journalist. And that's what I want. So the point of view of this film is through journalists, and it's rooted in that. And that's key.
Great. Well, I'm getting pinged right now saying that we have 5 more minutes. So before we break, can you give us, you know, maybe, I don't like to say advice, but what's your, you know, there's so much stuff happening in the world right now. And both of you are, you know, strong, resilient, idealistic. Both of you protect truth and democracy. Both of you challenge power. And this is Ari Ritokoski's commentary in the Q&A. Being such remarkable women, what kind of bit of insight do you think you could leave us tonight as we try to live through what will be a very long sort of haul, getting through the pandemic and then the effects of it over the next, probably 12 to 18 months, even longer? What are some insights you can share with us from the storyteller's point of view and from the journalist's point of view? Who wants to start?
I mean, Ramona, you want me to? I can go. I can go. I mean, so I think we're a cautionary tale, and I've said this for 4 years. In December of 2016, I was in Mountain View at Google saying that, keep track of what's happening, these attacks that we are going through, because it is going to happen to you. It has now moved global. It is, I guess part of it is I sound like I'm against tech, but I'm not. I actually, we were alpha partners of Facebook in the Philippines. This is how I know we embraced it. The growth of Rappler was built on Facebook, right? There was a point when I even thought of not doing the website and just doing it on Facebook. If Facebook had had better search in 2011, maybe we wouldn't even have a website. But here's the reality. The technology has really screwed up our values because it has atomized meaning. And the kinds of information operations that it has enabled is shifting the geopolitical power balance. And that sounds like a lot of things, but let me just put it this way. I've been a journalist for almost 35 years. I've never been arrested. I've been arrested a few times now. I've never been charged with criminal cases that are politically motivated. I have 8 civil and criminal cases. I am out on bail. It is insane that I have to go through this. So that's part of the reason you should watch the film. And please keep track of us, because the only way I'm staying out of prison is because you help shine the light. And I think the third part is we have to struggle for meaning in this crush of chaos. In the freedom of speech is not freedom of reach. And a comedian said that. Sacha Baron Cohen said that. Mm-hmm. If Sacha Cohen can say that, how can Mark Zuckerberg not understand that? Freedom of speech is not freedom of reach. The distribution exponentially of lies can kill. And the positive part of what's happening right now is at least social media platforms are taking down content. Twitter is probably the most activist in this sense now, because they realize lies can kill, right? And inciting to violence leads to real world violence. I'm waiting for Facebook to understand that. You have to stop impunity. And that's where we started in 2016. And I pointed out impunity on 2 fronts: President Duterte in his drug war, and now the administration of the Philippines. And the second one was American social media platforms. Impunity. They are allowing it, and they are now part of it. So this is a global problem. We're just one story in so many like us.
Great. Ramona.
Oh my goodness. As a storyteller, to just keep telling stories, but I think it's also important to invite other people who look like me to tell their stories as well. I think diversity of voices is really key, So what I'm finding in this time of like pause for me, it's not really pause because I'm really busy, but I'm really reaching out to filmmakers who are not usually heard, right? And saying, okay, what are you seeing? What do you want to talk about? What's been on your mind? I think because that's key moving forward. We need diversity of voices. It's about scaling up for me. It's about finding myself in a room with not only me looking like myself, right? I need other people in the room who look like me. And that, to me, that's always been, that's important, especially this part of my, this time. I think it's very, very key.
Mm-hmm. Well, thank you very much, my fellow Pinays. I'm so excited to be, actually, wait a second. I think we should all take a screen grab. I'm doing that right now. And thank you to the audience for this. Everyone, please go and check out 1,000 Cuts. Definitely follow them on social media. Follow them on Facebook. Watch the film, for God's sakes, if you haven't watched it yet. And certainly Rappler is taking memberships, etc. I believe that's true, right, Maria? You can be a member anywhere in the world. And so
Yes.
I'm sorry for the sales pitch, but but that's what we're here for. Filipinas in the house, says David Magdel. Truth to power. Woohoo! Woo! Thank you, Hot Docs. Thank you, Maria. Thank you, Ramona. And we'll see you again soon, hopefully in Toronto.
Yes.